A hospice nurse spent years listening to people in their final weeks. She heard the same regrets over and over. Today, we're going to line up 7 rules from 2 old Roman Stoics against her list. You'll see, almost word for word, how a philosophy from nearly 2,000 years ago answers the exact regrets people voice on their deathbed. Stay with me, because rule number 4 is the one that surprised researchers studying the aging brain itself. Epictetus opens his handbook, the Enchiridion, written around 125 AD, with a single dividing line. He says some things are up to us, our judgments, our choices, our reactions, and some things are not up to us, our bodies, our reputation, other people's opinions. He writes plainly that if you mistake what is not your own for what is your own, you will be hindered, you will grieve, you will blame both gods and men. Now hold that next to Bronnie Ware's book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, published in 2011. The regret she heard most often was this: people wished they had lived a life true to themselves, not the life others expected of them. That is the exact mistake Epictetus warned about. Spending your one life managing other people's opinions instead of your own choices. Here's the takeaway. Each morning, ask yourself one question. What here is actually mine to control? Your effort, yes. Your attitude, yes. What your neighbor thinks of your garden, not yours. Let it go before it takes root. And that's rule 1. But rule 2 is where Marcus Aurelius, riding alone in a military tent, says something that sounds almost too honest for an emperor to admit. Marcus Aurelius, in his private notebook we now call Meditations, written somewhere around 170 to 180 AD, tells himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He was not being morbid. He was using mortality as a compass, not a source of dread. Bronnie Ware's second most common regret was this: people wished they hadn't worked so hard. Not that work is bad, but that they let it consume years they could have spent differently. Marcus's line is the antidote. If you actually believed you could leave life today, would you spend the afternoon the way you're about to spend it? The takeaway here is simple. Once a week, ask the emperor's question about one plan on your calendar. If today were genuinely your last, would this still be on it? If not, that's information. Now here is the surprise I mentioned. Rule 4 connects Stoic philosophy to actual modern psychology, not just old wisdom, and it explains something you've probably felt but never had a name for. Epictetus has a blunt line in the Enchiridion. He says, "Do not seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish the events to happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." That's not passive resignation. It's a redirection of energy, away from fighting reality and toward working with it. Bronnie Ware's third regret was this: people wish they'd had the courage to express their feelings. Notice the connection. Many people suppress feelings because they are fighting an outcome they can't change, a relationship, a diagnosis, a family rift, instead of accepting what is and then honestly expressing where they stand inside it. The takeaway: when something goes sideways this week, try saying it out loud, exactly as Epictetus framed it. This is what is happening. Given that, what do I do now? Not, why is this happening to me? That's 3 rules down. Now we get to the one backed by a modern scientist, not just a Roman philosopher, and it might change how you think about your own aging. Here's something most people don't know. Aging doesn't just make you calmer by accident. Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen published a paper in 1999 in American Psychologist called Taking Time Seriously, a theory of socio-emotional selectivity. Her finding was this: when people perceive their remaining time as limited, they naturally shift their goals away from acquiring new information and status, and toward emotional meaning, deepening close relationships, and savoring the present. In other words, What Marcus Aurelius did on purpose in a war tent, treating each day as limited and letting that reshape his priorities. Your brain starts doing on its own as you age. That is not decline. Carstenson's research shows it's a reorganization toward what actually matters. This lines up with Bronnie Ware's fourth regret, people wishing they had stayed in touch with friends. The Stoics tell you to prioritize relationships on purpose. Carstenson's research shows that after 60, your own mind is already nudging you that direction, if you let it. The takeaway: don't fight the pull toward fewer, deeper relationships. Ware's research and Carstenson's research agree that pull is exactly right. Now, Rule 5 is the hardest one to actually practice, because it asks you to stop something almost everyone does without noticing. Epictetus writes in the Enchiridion that if you want to improve, you must be content to look foolish or ignorant in outside matters. He says you cannot want to seem knowledgeable to others and also actually make progress. You have to choose. This one strikes right at Bronnie Ware's first regret again, but from another angle. People spent their lives performing for an audience, then realized near the end that the audience barely remembers the performance. Marcus Aurelius says something similar in Meditations, that even the most famous names are eventually forgotten, and that fame is smoke. The takeaway: pick one thing this month you've been doing purely to look a certain way to others, and quietly stop. Notice how little actually happens. We're 2 rules from the end now, and Rule 6 deals with something almost every person over 60 has felt at 3 in the morning: regret about time already spent. Marcus Aurelius has a striking passage in Meditations where he reminds himself that even if he lived 3,000 years, he would still only ever be living the same single present moment, over and over. No one loses any life but the one they are living now. His logic is this: you can't lose the past, you can only misuse the present. Bronnie Ware's fifth and final regret was this: people wished they had let themselves be happier, that they'd realized happiness was a choice rather than waiting for the right conditions. Marcus is making almost the same argument. Stop grading your whole life. Grade today. Did you act well today? That's the only test you'll ever actually take. The takeaway: at night don't ask, was my life good? Ask, was today handled well? That's a question you can actually answer and act on tomorrow. And that brings us to the final rule, the one that ties every regret and every Stoic line together. And honestly, it's the reason this video exists. Epictetus closes much of his teaching around one idea, that death is not terrible in itself. Our judgment about it is what's terrible, and that judgment can be examined and changed. Marcus Aurelius goes further in Meditations. He treats the awareness of death not as darkness to avoid, but as clarity. It strips away trivial concerns and shows you what's actually urgent: kindness, honesty, using your time well. Bronnie Ware spent her career at the bedsides of people doing this final accounting. Every regret she recorded: working too much, not expressing feelings, losing touch with friends, not letting themselves be happy, not living true to themselves, is a version of the same warning. They wished they had lived according to their own values, starting sooner. The Stoics built an entire philosophy trying to get ahead of that exact regret. By practicing, daily, the questions most people only ask at the very end. What is actually mine to control? Would I still do this if today were my last? Am I living according to my own values or someone else's? The takeaway, and it's the whole video in one line: you don't need a diagnosis to start asking hospice questions. You can ask them tonight, at your own kitchen table, with plenty of time left to act on the answers. Let's bring it home. Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, writing centuries apart, kept landing on the same idea: control what's yours, accept what isn't, and let the shortness of life sharpen your priorities instead of scaring you. Bronnie Ware heard the human cost of ignoring that idea in the actual words of the dying. And Laura Carstensen's research shows your own mind is already leaning this direction as you age, whether you notice it or not. This is educational content, not financial advice, and nothing here is medical or professional guidance, just history, research, and a few old, well-tested ideas. Here's a question worth sitting with. Of the 5 regrets Bronnie Ware recorded, which one is quietly showing up in your own life right now? Tell us in the comments. Honestly, no one's grading you. If this kind of thing, real sources, no fluff, aimed at people who have actually lived some life, is useful to you, consider subscribing to After 60 Compass. We'll keep doing the homework so you don't have to.